Greetings. This is Doc Ock here, coming to you live and direct today from Black Facts Headquarters Central with the proverb of the day. If you tell people to live together, you tell them to quarrel. And that's a proverb from the Congo, no less. Poem today is called Black Lives Matter and So Do I. Oh, so do these glasses. Make sure I got them on here. Here we go. All right, now, Black Lives Matter and So Do I. It's a Doc Ock original. Black lives matter just like me. I'm black, I'm free, and I matter, you see. Dark matter in space is the majority. We're black, we're dark, so why do we act like a minority? We love iced tea and it's black like me. I come from a place that's black as space, just like me. Darker than the darkest midnight. Why are they always talking bad about me? It's such a commonality that no one gets the blame when it's prejudice just the same. Coffee is best when it's strong. How do we know how strong it is? Because it's best when it's black. The blacker the better, the sweeter the juice. It's time we celebrate the darkness before we cut it loose. From darkness did we emerge, to darkness do we return. There's no reason to fear the darkness. We make love in the dark. Is that bad? So why hate the darkness when it's really evil that we fear? Now that was a commentary on all the dark talk that's getting thrown around right now. Ever since Joe Biden made that statement about that it was really dark times we were going into, and it was going to be a dark day, and all that dark stuff he was throwing around. Seems like everybody else has picked up on it. All the newscasters picked up on that real clear. Now here's the question I have. If it's such a dark day, why is it that it ain't the dark people that create the dark day? It's been who? Giuliani, Scaramucci. What's that other dude's name? Oh, there have been so many, I can't even list them all. Roger Stone. So it's all these white folks creating this dark day, and we won't even mention T-Rump because he's right there on the top of that little stump. But yet it's a dark day. So I object to the slander against the darkness. That's what that poem is about. I wrote that some time ago, but I'm just not, matter of fact, that one is 2 months old, but I'm just now bringing it to light, quote unquote. And I like everything to get right, whether it's in the light or the dark. It's not the darkness that we fear, it's evil. So why don't we just say that? It's pure evil. Maybe there's a reason people don't want to say that, but I think that's where I'm going to have to go. Meanwhile, back to the Hausa Horsemen. We were going over the, just trying to give you an outline about Hausa culture. And we had got to the part where we were dealing with this idea of migration. So migration is not something that just happened overseas and that just happened to people trying to get away from a potato famine or some other kind of a disastrous occurrence in their particular country and run to another country in terms of coming to America. But we've had internal migrations all over the continent of Africa for thousands, if not millions of years. So we're going to talk about some of that. The political turmoil in Hausa land in the 1500s was accompanied by large-scale immigration that continued in the 1600s, especially to Kano and Katsina. Immigrants came from Bornu, the Mali, and Songhai empires in the west and from the Sahara. Among these immigrants were the Tuareg and Fulani herdsmen, Songhai fishermen and farmers, Arab Wangarawa, and Berber merchants and traders. Berber merchant traders. We'll come back to that after a while. Muslim scholars and clerics and refugee aristocrats from Bornu. Immigrants strengthened Islamic literacy and learning among the Hausa, especially in the cities. As immigration went on, the Hausa people themselves were also moving west and south to avoid military threat or follow trade and farming opportunities. Hausa immigration to various parts of West Africa was substantial after the 1500s. Now, you know, the 1500s end with the year 1600 in this case, because we're not talking about the 15th century, but the 1500s. So they go all the way from the year 1500 to the year 1600. Such population movements, however, had political and cultural risk. The Tuareg, one of the Saharan Berber groups frequently on the move, fought the Hausa of Gobir, finally overthrowing them and establishing their Muslim rule in the year 1495. Maybe they did mean the 15th century. They done gone back 5 years now. The spread of the Arab language and the Muslim religion accompanied such migration and conquest. The Islamization of the Hausa weakened the political structure and authority of local chiefs, who perceived this external influence of Islam as a threat. Local chieftaincies were eventually ignored as state structures became more centralized. Traditional places of worship were deliberately destroyed to remove the chief's main focus of power. The process of Islamization did not completely eliminate traditional religious beliefs, either in the rural areas or even amongst the converted. Belief in other gods, magic, and witchcraft persisted. The impact of Islam was greatest among the ruling elite of merchants and traders in the cities and large towns. Hausa political institutions. Early political life in Hausa land was centered on the hamlet or village, otherwise known as the Gadi or Kauye. In the rural areas and on the walled or stockaded town, otherwise known as the Berm, nope. Let's put those glasses back on so I can see here. Oh, there we go. And on the walled or stockaded town or Burdani in the cities. The elementary unit of rural politics was a group of families, the Gidaje, under the authority of a chief. Different family groups lived in small rural communities known as Kauyuka. Villages, Garuruwa, were larger and more permanent and headed by a village chief known as the Sakingari or Magajugari, who was sometimes assisted by district leaders known as the Masunguwa. The district capital or Burdani headed this hierarchy. Trade was conducted in the fortified town, which was surrounded by farmland. The Burdani was a relatively self-sufficient community. The Burdani itself was headed by a Sarkin Kasu, the district or county chief who had authority over all the other chiefs. The head of the country was the divine king or Sarki, who had absolute power over his kingdom. He was normally chosen from the royal lineage of princely families in closely related cities and provinces. The nobility controlled the machinery of the state and maintained their power through marriage to each other. A lower level of state officials was appointed by the Sarki for duties in the state bureaucracy and military. By their position, they gained access to wealth and prestige. Together, these groups constituted an aristocracy called the Masu Sarauta. From this group was chosen the Council of State. Important posts among the state officials included the Galadima, who was like a prime minister, responsible for all affairs of state. He was left in charge when the Sadiki and other chiefs went to war. In some states, he was always a eunuch. Holders of this powerful office sometimes became Sadiki. The Galadima was served by a number of officials and dignitaries, each responsible for a particular function or territorial unit. Among these officials was the Madawaki or Madaki, commander-in-chief of the army. He was next in importance to the Sadiki, served as his appointments advisor, replied to the Sadiki's address on feast days, organized the meetings of the chief counselors, and shared responsibility with them for choosing the new king. Now, there were a number of pictures in here I skipped by, and I'll show you a couple of them here. Let's see. I'm going to show you this one here. This one is when they were talking about literacy and learning, etc. Hausa is its own. The Hausa people have their own language, and so their language is also called Hausa, or maybe variation on that. But they have their own language, but it's written. It can be written in Arabic. So that's one of the ways it can be written. There may be another script they can write it in also. Well, it's also, they also use Romanized letters, I'm sure by now also. But a lot of the old documents are going to be written in Arabic. And then here you see some of the dress. So when you see people dressed like this, you can not quite assume that they're Hausa, because sometimes they could be Yoruba, but some of the clues that you get are the turbans, and then this face covering here that goes down around below the face, but at times they will put that right over the mouth and the nose, like we do our masks today. Now, if you're out there in the Sahara and you don't place that properly, if you put it under your nose, you're going to die, because you're going to be breathing all that sand. So a lot of times that's what that's for, is to protect people from all the sand that's blowing around and the dust. Okay, we're not even not to even mention the dust. But these are traditional clothing, the traditional wear of the Hausa people. And there's also a symbol that goes in the center on either the back or the front, or the back and the front, that will identify the clothing as Hausa, but it doesn't always mean that the people that wearing them are Hausa. Babatunde Olatunji, one of my teachers, he always wore clothing like that as well, but he's not from Hausa land. Okay, so let's see where we at. So this Madaki, chief of the army, does all these different things, including having shared responsibility with the chief counselors for choosing the new king. Other key officials included the Lord of the Treasury, known as the Magaji, the head, they call it a Gauler. I don't know how you say that. It's Gaoler. I'm going to have to go back and look that one up. But it means jailer, okay? Known as the Yadi, the head of the king's bodyguard, the Sadakin Dogarai, and chief of police, the Sadakin Yandoka. Slaves were household servants and laborers and were used as currency. In other words, you could swap and trade them, apparently. They occupied a subordinate position in Hausa society. The Hausa people were renowned both for trading and fighting. The courage and reliability of Hausa mercenaries were highly valued. In colonial times, the French relied on Hausa soldiers to help control their colony of Madagascar. The Belgians used Hausa forces in the Congo. The Germans recruited both Hausa soldiers and traders in their conquest of Cameroon, the former to fight, the latter to act as guides and spies. The British formed the armed Hausa police force in their colony at Lagos in 1863. The recruits were mainly liberated or runaway Hausa slaves who joined up to gain their freedom. In Lagos, they were given plots of land and became a privileged group. Hausa soldiers helped the British defeat the Asante in Ghana in 1873 and 74. A number of Hausa policemen were also transferred from Lagos to Ghana. After the British victory, many Hausa were recruited into the Ghanaian army. In return for their efforts, the Hausa benefited substantially from European colonialism. Apart from land grants to attract their service, the British built a mosque at their headquarters in Ghana and granted them privileges to ensure their loyalty. Moreover, the Asante defeat broke the trade monopoly of the Asante between the coast and the interior. Hausa traders could then ignore the Asante ban on their movement to the south and the trade embargo that the Asante had imposed. Many Hausa migrated to Ghana from the Savannah Belt and spread all over the country. They included traders, Muslim clerics or malams, craftsmen, butchers, drummers, and porters. Prostitutes were also among these migrants. Okay. The Hausa came to control much of the commerce in Ghana and spread Islam and Hausa culture in the region. Despite the advantages for the Hausa, European colonialism destroyed the military and political power of the West African kingdoms and states. System of justice. Traditionally, complaints were brought before the village or district head, or if in the capital, the Sarki himself. The Sarki was assisted by the chief of his household and other officials to address grievances. Petty offenses were dealt with by the Sarki alone, but his counselors were consulted on more serious crimes. The adoption of the Islamic system of justice, Sharia law, brought about a separation of executive and judicial functions. However, the ultimate judge in some matters was still the Sarki. The Muslim system included a professional class of magistrates and jurists trained in the law, with the major judicial responsibility entrusted to the Alkali, who was responsible for administering the Maliki Code. Judges traveled to local courts and outlying districts which had the right of appeal to the high court in the capital. In smaller villages, judicial authority was vested in the village head, though minor offenses could be settled by family heads or chiefs. So I'm going to show you one more picture before we end this little part, this little session here. You can see here again, you see people at looks like they could be at a marketplace, but I don't see any goods. So it's some kind of a gathering, but I don't know what they're gathered there for. See, what is the caption saying? Oh, it says here, most houses are now Muslim. These worshipers are at the Masalajin Bello Mosque in Sokoto, Nigeria. Doesn't look like they're worshiping though, because they're not a worship position, but it does say they're at the mosque. But the reason I'm showing it to you is just so you can see the difference in the dress. What we call a dress here, that is mainly for women, primarily worn by women, is a similar type of robe that we wear not just in Hausa land, but all over Africa. People, men, wear these long robes that go nearly to the ground, down past the knees, or all the way to the ground in some cases, very close to the ground. So, very different style of dress. But if you watch Star Trek, any of the Star Treks, especially the most recent ones, you'll see a lot of the people. If you've seen African dress like this, apparel like this, you'll notice the different dignitaries that come from the different planets and planetary systems, etc. They wear a dress that looks like this type of African dress. So just a touchdown there for you. Thing is that I know it was kind of difficult when I was going through there and reading all these, about the Galadima and the Malaki and everything. And I'm giving you all these words. There's a whole slew of vocabulary words that most of you are not going to be familiar with. And I realize that already. However, the reason I went through those, what was in the parentheses, a lot of those descriptions were in the parentheses, and I read those as well as what was not in the parentheses, the English part, is because language means something. And every time we use a word like chief or president or king, it gives us a certain kind of connotation that, if they're a king, they can do X, Y, and Z. If they're a president, they can do A, B, C. If they're a chief, they can do MNOP. And it's not necessarily like that. Okay? It's not necessarily like that. It doesn't necessarily translate. Like, for example, when they were talking about the slaves, I know I talked about earlier how the African slavery was not like the slavery that we know over here. So to call it slavery is really like a misnomer. It was more like a welfare system. Okay, it was like a welfare system, although it was used for people that were captured in battle. If you capture somebody in battle, you could bring him back and make him a household servant. But because he was your household servant, did not make him your pet dog. So you cannot beat him like you beat your pet dog because he peed on the floor or whatever. Okay, so it was a different system altogether. And so when we're trying to equate these things and we're reading different accounts and they're talking about slavery over in Africa and not the same thing. So as another example, before I close out, in various countries around in the Americas today, modern day times, like say, for instance, in Jamaica. In Jamaica, a lot of people have house servants. Same thing in Africa. A lot of people in Ghana, Nigeria, etc., have house servants. But those house servants are not necessarily considered to be the scum of the earth, but that's like a form of social welfare in those areas. So somebody that didn't get to go to school, doesn't have a lot of skills, but they know how to do some things, you could hire them as your house servant. You could hire them as your chauffeur. You could hire them in different ways so that they don't need to have a welfare system. And as a matter of fact, the welfare system that exists today here may do us more harm than good. And the last thing I'm going to say about that is that in Ethiopia, a lot of people were receiving aid from the U.S. after during the times of a drought or a flood or some kind of food shortage, whatever it was. It wasn't a flood, but it would have been a drought or a food shortage. And the Ethiopian government saw what it was doing to the will of the people to actually do for self. And they said, you know what? We don't want any more of your aid. Keep it, because the aid itself was doing more harm than good, making the people very indolent, made them not want to work, lazy. That's the word I'm looking for, lazy. It just made them purely lazy. So, something to think about. Hope y'all ain't on welfare. But in the meanwhile, we're not on welfare here either, but we do need some kind of form of aid and assistance from all you good people out there. Now, I know I said that our 2020 campaign would end on October 20, and today is the 21st. However, we still have not reached our goal of $20,000 in donations. So we're going to have to up the ante, continue on. So we're keeping our 2020 and going all the way to November 20. Let's see how y'all do on this side of that equation. And what I'm going to do today is introduce one more way, which I've introduced it before. I'm going to post it up as well. The way you can assist us is very simple. As you're buying up your Christmas gifts, as you're buying up your food products, your books, whatever it is that you're buying on Amazon, instead of ordering it through your regular Amazon link, just type in Amazon Smile, 2 words, Amazon Smile. right up there in the address bar. Just type it in, Amazon Smile, and another link. It'll have a different color. It'll be orange instead of white with a white background and orange. It'll be orange with white letters. Okay, type it in and you just sign up. It doesn't take but a half a second for you to sign in there or sign up there. And then what'll happen is every time, and then save that, bookmark that link so that every time you go to order something from Amazon, you go to that link and you're going to designate Black Facts Educational Research Incorporated as a beneficiary of Amazon. And so what'll happen is it won't cost you any money there, but they will take 1% of all the monies you spend on Amazon and donate that to Black Facts Educational Research Incorporated. So it's another way to make a donation that costs you nothing. You're already spending that money anyway. All you're doing now is just directing that the organization, Amazon, donate 1% of all that you spend to our organization. So it's a very small amount, but it adds up if enough people do it. So that's what we're going to encourage y'all to do for the month of November. In the meanwhile, this is Doc Ock signing out. We'll be back here tomorrow with a new story because we're moving on from Hausa land to the land of my fathers, Ethiopia. That's how I said it. Absolutely. Ethiopia. You can say it that way too if you like, but don't say it too many times because I might get a copyright on that. So we're going all the way to the east, and we're going to deal with the modes of transportation in Ethiopia. Still today, but particularly before the era of Haile Selassie. Jah Rastafari. We'll see you back here this evening at 9, and we'll see you here again tomorrow at noon. This is Doc Ock at noon and 9, signing off. Peace out, y'all.